How, in your experience, have people been dealing positively with that, and how have they used some of the programs available to do so?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, the DG Radio, for this kind invitation. My best regards to Ricardo Ferreira, a long friend, a friend from many years dealing with the Spanish-Portuguese border, and Martin Guillermo, who is the Secretary General of the European Association of Border Region, that I was Vice President in 2 different periods. Listen, Andrew, from my experience, and my experience is not updated because I live in this position for 3 years. But what is the target of risk management in a border? Is to double the resources. This is the target. Of course, there are resources, there are skills, there are means in one side of the border. Or why don't we count with the near resources instead of calling for new resources to the other part of the country affected? And for that reason, I think stock taking is a useful tool, and we have to take into account that in the most of the countries, the border regions are more depopulated, and for this reason, there are less resources than in the big cities, normally in the coast, normally in the center of the country. This is a question we have to deal with. Because for this demographic reason, there are no the same resources that we stock in the big cities. Then the first step is to know what resources exist on the other side of the border, and this is the stockpile. And what is the access? What is the way to access these skills? That means you have to identify an interlocutor. You have to define what is the way to address in a most speed way this interlocutor who can decide the delivery of the means immediately. That means to have a non-bureaucratic heavy red tape procedures, because if not, at the end it could be useless. And we have, for me, the reason that has been not mentioned for the colleagues, when we talk about disasters, mainly we are dealing with law enforcement bodies, probably military or similar, police or gendarmerie or that kind of bodies, and even the very hierarchical bodies like firefighters and even medical. And for that reason, this is a question we have to be aware. This is not a level in which we can improvise. This is not the case when we are dealing with military, with law enforcement. The procedure has to be clear from the very beginning. You can't improvise. You can address being a major to try to be in contact with a military unit on the other side. And for that reason, when we deal with this kind of personnel, law enforcement, military, paramilitary, very hierarchical bodies, the procedure has to be clear from the very beginning. It has to be exist before you can improvise this when you are under the pressure of a disaster. And for that reason, and you have to know, mainly in many countries, that kind of bodies depends on the national authorities. That means another layer of difficulty. It's not the same to call to a major, it's not the same to call from one side of the border to the regional structures on the other side. If you have to count with military and in other aspects, you have to deal with national level, and this is not as easy as if you are dealing with your regular interlocutors in the cross-border cooperation, even because the attitude. But the question is, if these kind of bodies, law enforcement, military, firefighters, are engaged and committed, they are highly effective. But they have to receive the orders by the channel of command, to be very clear, to be precise, and when they are engaged, when they know the procedure, they are highly effective. And this is an asset we have to try to today. The other side, and I talk from my experience, and when Angela probably knows very well than myself how is the current situation, is the technical issues always can be overcome with more or less imagination. Allow me to explain what happened when we had a different radio channel in the towers watching the forest, and the Portuguese and the Spanish, they had different devices or different radio channels, and we always sent our machines to them. Then they have two machines, the Portuguese and the Spanish one, and that means they are able to attend and to be heard from the other side. But there are other cases in which it's more complicated. I don't know, Angela, how it is, but I remember when we sent in some occasions to Portugal some planes to fight forest fires, and there was problems with the identification of the planes, with the flight plans, with the authorization and the permits, because the authorities who asked for the plane were different than the militaries taking care of the aerial space of the country, and we had that kind of problem. Other problem, for example, when you call from one side of the border to the 112 services, sometimes you are directed to the 112 services to the other country. That means this country and this 112 center has to be aware immediately to transfer the call to other 112 center to the other side. But we encountered at that time that the Portuguese protocols, they didn't allow to transfer the call. That means one person in the Spanish border, they called the 112, they will transfer because the roaming system and the companies working in the border to the 112 in Portugal, and in Portugal the protocol does not allow easily to transfer them. But I think these technical problems can be solved. I think, and I'm finishing, Andrew. There is other situation in which the problem is not to double the resources, but to choose who is taking care of security issue. I don't want to talk about disaster. For example, small boats anchor in a border river. Anchor for months. For people who is using a small boat, a yacht, and who is, of course, if the boat is in one shore, is the one country or another. But if the boat is anchored in the middle of a border river, it's not as clear who can deliver, who can take care and watch what are the activities of this boat. For that reason, I think we have to encounter some kind of horizontal aspect of this risk management in border and try to tackle them under the umbrella of course, different administrative powers, different political structures, different means. But I think the technical issue could be solved if the political will is clear and if we have the procedure. And for me, this is the key question: to know who has to call to whom to trigger immediately the mobilization of the resources on the other side of the border. Thank you.
Yeah, Nacho.